The Duncan mechanic Granger Taylor vanished in 1980, not long after building a life-size model of a UFO in the backyard of his family's farm. In the afternoon following his disappearance, his stepfather discovered a note tacked to his bedroom door, laying out Taylor's plans. On the back of the note was a hand-drawn map of Waterloo Mountain, not far from his family's farm at Seminoles Lake. He hasn't been seen since. Taylor had left behind a will, taking the time to make 2 alterations before embarking on his journey. The word funeral was detected, and the word death was replaced by departure. In 1986, truck fragments and bones were found at the blast site on Mount Prevost. Though DNA testing was not prevalent at the time, pathology work by the coroner attributed the adult human bones to Taylor. Fragments of clothing found amid the decayed material were from a shirt owned by Taylor, as confirmed by his mother, who has since died. The fragments matched the fabric of the shirt she had sewn for him not long before he disappeared. Representatives from the auto division of the RCMP confirmed the truck was his. A report by the BC Coroner's Office officially declared Taylor dead, and with that, the strange tale of Granger Taylor was officially closed. One of his friends, however, disputes that evidence, arguing that it isn't conclusive. Others who have never met Taylor have put forward a variety of theories, including that he relocated to Colombia or was kidnapped by the U.S. government to work in Area 51, the remote U.S. airbase that's at the center of the alien conspiracy theories. Spaceman, a documentary that aired on CBC TV, dig deeper into Taylor's life, but ultimately failed to draw any conclusions about his fate. Quote, "We didn't set out to prove any theories," end quote, said executive producer Jennifer Horvath of Toronto's Alibi Entertainment, which produced Spaceman. Quote, "The story that is revealed is one of a person who meant a lot to a number of people who never had the opportunity to publicly mourn. A story like this is obviously a very personal one for family members. They had some concerns because this is the kind of story that could easily be sensationalized." End quote. Granger Taylor, 32, was officially declared dead as of November 30th, 1980. Plenty has been written about Granger Taylor in the years following his 1980 disappearance, and he's a subject of a healthy amount of online interest. A series of stories in the Times Colonist by reporter Derek Sedenius covered the nuts and bolts of the tale, but conspiracy theories from authors, podcasters, and theorists from around the world continue unabated, plumbing the deep corners of his story. Horvath said co-directors John Cho and Nicolina Lanni chose to avoid the many conspiracy theorists who have weighed in on the story. The theories about Taylor being relocated to Colombia or kidnapped by the U.S. government, or that his abandoned pickup truck, grown over by moss and trees, was discovered in the dense woods of Mount Prevost, were largely left out of the film. Quote, "We have a photo of the truck, but we weren't able to locate the vehicle," end quote, Horvath said. The image of an overgrown Datsun that appears to be from the same era as the 1966 truck Taylor was driving the night he vanished is alarming when it appears at the end of Spaceman. A report by the BC Coroner's Service obtained by the Times Colonist includes confirmation that the vehicle identification number of the truck, parts found off Satellite Road near Mount Prevost, where Taylor was reportedly headed on the night of November 29, 1980, matched that of Taylor's truck. The cause of death listed on the report was massive injuries due to the consequence of an explosion. The finding was based on circumstantial evidence at the site, according to the report. Taylor's friend Robert Keller was 15 in 1980 when Taylor disappeared. Though he was more than twice Keller's age at the time of his disappearance, Taylor had a profound effect on both Keller and many others in the area. Big and burly, the grade 8 dropout was mechanically inclined, and often taught neighborhood kids the ins and outs of machinery, serving as a mentor. With the neighborhood kids as helpers, he rebuilt locomotives, bulldozers, cars, trucks, and even airplanes. A Kitty Hawk plane from the Second World War that Taylor restored was on display for years in the Duncan area before being purchased by a private collector in North Dakota. Some of Taylor's restored trains and cars have made their way into the BC Forest Discovery Center in Duncan. The family's 21-acre property was a hub of activity during the 1970s as the master mechanic, the oldest of 8 children in a blended family, schooled his understudies. Quote, "He was very much of the place where he grew up," end quote, Horvath said. Quote, "The work that he did as far as finding machinery and restoring it was impressive for somebody who didn't have a lot of formal education. He could build anything. He was a uniquely talented guy," end quote. Taylor's parents, Jim and Grace, have since died, and the farm is now owned by Taylor's sister, Grace Reynolds. It was on this same property that Taylor built the object most often associated with this story, a spaceship. Constructed from 2 satellite dishes, his interest in space travel was piqued when Star Wars arrived in 1977, and the construction of his UFO-like fortress, complete with wood stove and bed, began soon after. At first, it was all in fun, but when he built a radio with which he could communicate with aliens, based on the reoccurring dreams about alien abduction that he was having, questions about his well-being began to circulate. Keller, now 53, helped Taylor build the spaceship and maintains that his friend was anything but suicidal. Quote, "Granger was the most intelligent, down-to-earth, wise man that I've ever met in my life," end quote, said Keller, who with his family was among the last to see Taylor alive. He maintains he would have known if Taylor were intending to kill himself. Quote, "He wasn't a nut. He was a very, very intelligent guy who carried on with his life normally. But after you say spaceman, then all of a sudden he becomes a nut," end quote. The back door of the Taylor family home was left unlocked for years, in the event he should walk through at some point. Shy with the tendency to be socially awkward, Taylor could be classified as an eccentric by some, but that didn't mean he was unhappy. The common sense theory that ignores the space travel hypothesis, however, points to the conclusion that he killed himself. Taylor's mental health had reportedly declined in the months leading to his disappearance, and according to Vice magazine, written in 2016, he was taking LSD regularly before he vanished. It's for that reason that some members of the Taylor family who participated in the documentary have given up hope he will ever be found. Quote, "Let's set the record. Granger's gone. He's dead," end quote, half-brother Joseph Taylor says in the film. Quote, "He did some amazing things. Granger had some challenges. He couldn't deal with those challenges. He took his life," end quote. Not knowing either way is a difficult burden for some to carry, which is why the Taylor family decided not to have a funeral, even after he was officially declared dead by the coroner in 1986. The date of his death was listed as November 30th, 1980. Quote, "For a number of people we spoke to, this was a chance to go through their experience and say goodbye in a very final way," end quote, Horvath said. Without further data, however, many believe he could still be alive. Taylor made a stop at Bob's Grill near Duncan before journeying to the Mount Prevost that stormy night of his disappearance, and neighbors reported hearing a loud boom around the time he had arrived at his destination. Was it the sound of a UFO leaving Earth's atmosphere, or the sound of a pickup truck being blown apart by dynamite? Duncan was besieged by a historically bad storm that night, Keller said, so it could have easily been thunder. Taylor had told Keller that the aliens would likely arrive when the weather was bad, so they could travel undercover. Taylor had experience with explosives, and the fact he reportedly had dynamite in his possession at the time of his disappearance shouldn't factor into the equation, Keller said. Quote, "He was too smart to have an accident up on the mountain. There's no way. He knew how to handle explosives. He was basically an expert. So when it came to safety, that was his number one priority. It doesn't work with me. He wouldn't have an accident, and he wouldn't have done it on purpose," end quote. Horvath said that despite their best efforts, They were unable to locate the blast site, listed as 600 feet in diameter on the coroner's report during the filming of Spaceman. Keller also has questions about the veracity of the evidence. Quote, "The police said it was a blue truck, but his truck was a Pepto-Bismol pink. I helped him paint it with my buddy Darren," end quote, he said. Quote, "What they found on the mountain was not Granger's truck. They have no actual idea if it was Granger's bones or not," end quote. The ongoing fascination with Taylor is understandable. If there's anyone who could survive an interstellar journey and still be alive today, the quick-thinking mechanic is a better candidate than most. Whether he went on the journey into space or died soon after, Keller believes he will never see his friend again. And that is a saddening, sobering thought, he admitted. Not knowing if he's dead is no better than knowing. Quote, "Is it possible that he killed himself?" End quote, Keller asked, bringing himself to tears with his answer. Quote, "It's really hard to accept that. I know that's a possibility, but there's all kinds of possibilities," end quote. Even though the filmmaker spent weeks researching the story and shooting interviews for Spaceman, Horvath said the narrative was left open-ended. "No one has absolute knowledge of the situation," she said. Quote, "We couldn't close the book on it definitively," end quote.